boom has been diminished. It now requires so much stimulus because we're so addicted to it. And, the bigger the economy gets, at least, or the phony economy, the more stimulus that you need to give it another shot. It's just like any other addiction. I guess you build up a tolerance, and if you're a drug addict and if you keep taking the same drug, you need more and more of it. I mean, if you look at how muted the phony recovery we got as a result of the bailouts this time, we had record amounts of stimulus. We had more stimulus under Bernanke than we had under Greenspan, yet we barely moved the needle. I mean, we didn't even get the unemployment rate to come below 8%. In fact, it's really 15%. Economic growth, the GDP numbers couldn't even really pierce 2 for very long. And we're already on the cusp of another recession. I mean, the Fed knew that if it didn't come up with even more stimulus, we would be back in recession. But now, since the problem is so much bigger, the debt is so much larger, you need that much of a dose. And again, you get a smaller and smaller reaction. And I think we're at the point of overdose. I'm at the point where we're going to die from all this stimulus. It's just not going to work anymore. The world's not going to hold our paper. And it's just that we've reached the end of the road. I mean, I don't know how many feet we got left. I mean, but I think it falls apart within the next several years, maybe within the next several months. I mean, you can't pinpoint these things, but I think the world is going through these sovereign debt crises, and we're probably next on the list.
Of interest rates be from here? What if we had full information, what would we be doing right now? And the answer to that is I don't know. But equally important, you don't know. Yellen doesn't know. Nobody knows. All of this has to be undertaken in the knowledge that we are in a time of, I guess things are always uncertain, but maybe even more uncertain now than usual. Let me give you three. This is going to be
U.S. crisis in '07 and '08, we see that this same rapid 5-year buildup in private debt happened in all of our major financial crises. You see it here in the 20s. See this rapid acceleration in private debt that preceded the crash of 1929? Here we see Japan's crisis of '91, 28% growth in 5 years prior to their crisis of '91. And we'll talk a little bit about what happened after the fact. It was in essence a deleveraging that created deflationary pressure. But the buildup of private debt is what brought the crisis. We see this in Asia in '97. There was a 29% growth in private debt to GDP in Korea in the period before the '97 crisis. You also see this in Indonesia here, about a 43% growth in the 5-year buildup. Now, in every single one of these cases, government debt to GDP is actually benign or improving in the 5-year period prior to the crisis. Here you see this dramatically in Spain. Spain, which of the major Eurozone countries is in the worst shape, and you can see why. There was 49% growth leading up to the crisis. They're now at a level of 216% private debt to GDP, an astonishing number. But look what was happening to the government debt prior to the crisis. It was actually improving in ratio to GDP. Businesses feel flush. Consumers feel flush. They're paying more taxes in a lending boom period. The government is receiving more revenue. Everybody feels like they're winning. When we
No peg has ever lasted. It cannot. I mean, you've been there on Capitol Hill. I mean, the problem with the gold standard, everybody talks about, okay, fine, but they fixed gold at $35 and never changed it. But you kept increasing the amount of money. I mean, obviously the system cannot function that way. At some point it's got to crack. And the problem is when politics gets involved in this, they are mostly lawyers. They know how to write a law. They don't know how things function. And they just try to put their back against the wall and hold it at all costs. And that's what's going on with the euro. I mean, they designed it incorrectly. And I can tell you, they came to me in 1997, and I told them this is going to fail. You have.
The central economic policy issue of our time is generating broad-based wage growth. It is the solution to the problems that we need to fix. Growing income inequality, boosting middle-class incomes, reducing poverty, enhancing social mobility. And it's easy to figure out why. Middle-class families rely primarily on their earnings from the job. If we don't boost wages, we're not going to get growing middle-class incomes. Low-income households, 70% of their income comes from earnings-related items. If we don't boost wages, we'll never lift people out of poverty. We have a wage problem because of policies we've adopted and policies we have failed to adopt. It need not be this way. We could have wages grow with productivity, something that used to occur in the 50s and 60s and early 70s. It has not happened that way for 3 decades. There's lots of income being produced. It's just not going to workers.
So we can spend most of the time having a conversation. Now, thanks in part to some of the decisions that we made early on in the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression, right when I came into office, we've made real progress. Our businesses have created more than 12 million new jobs over the past 5 years. The unemployment rate has fallen from 10% right when I was coming into office to 5.5%. More kids are graduating from high school, more kids are attending college, more people are able to save more money at the pump because our energy production has gone up, our clean energy production has gone up. More Americans know the security of health care because of this thing called the Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare. And so the recovery reaches more Americans every single day. And the question we now face is, are we going to accept an economy in which, going forward, just a few folks are doing exceptionally well,